Okay. Meine Damen und Herren, können Sie... jetzt wird's besser.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, all those who'd like to take photographs, could you please come up to the front? We will take a photograph with the keynote speaker, the director of the book fair, and the president of the German Publishers and Booksellers Association.
So, Gaia, for the family photo, please enter the stage, and all the colleagues who want to take a picture may do it right now.
Nein, die Autorin in der Mitte. Ja, die Author ist in der Mitte.
The author, of course.
Ja, wunderbar.
Alles schön, es geht kaputt. Excuse me, I have to save.
Thorsten, wieder runter?
Nee, bleibt immer, setzt euch bitte einfach oben
Ja.
schon.
Machen wir eine Rede.
Okay, Karin, brauchst du auch noch?
Ich hole mir meine Rede.
Okay. Gaia, and if you like, just you three, take place.
Wie sitzen wir? Dann gehe ich hier, ja? Ist sie denn, weißt du, ob sie noch die Woche da ist? Oder ist wieder weg? Ah ja, so. Gaia, maybe you sit over there in the middle.
Jetzt sind wir ein ganz klein bisschen spät.
We're slightly late, but I think we'll catch up there. I'm Thorsten Casimir. I'm spokesman for Frankfurt Book Fair. You can see me radiating. I'm radiating because you are here. I'm very pleased about the large number of people who've come. I would just like to announce briefly what's in store for you in the next hour. You've got 3 speeches coming up, 3 keynotes, lots of ideas. We've got lots of topics we could speak about, as you could imagine, and we'll get a small selection of that today. And after these 3 speeches, there will be the chance for you to ask questions. And after the Q&A, there's even the chance to have original interviews with the 3 speakers. So first of all, we're going to have Karin Schmidt-Friderichs, who is the chair of the Association of the German Book Trade. And when she's not the chair, she's also a publisher in Mainz. And then afterwards, we'll have Juergen, director of the Frankfurt Book Fair. Some of you will have seen both of them, and who we have not seen maybe, but who will certainly remember is our keynote speaker today, Gaia Vince, who has said, yes, I'm coming from London. We're very happy to have you here.
Das war's schon von.
So that's it from my side. Karin, you can start us off.
Ja. Gaia Vince, Juergen Boos, dear journalists, bloggers, and book enthusiasts. A few hours from now, we will open with the presence of the Slovenian President Nataša Pirc-Moža, and unfortunately not with our Federal Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who will be in Israel. But we will open the 75th Frankfurt Book Fair. And such anniversaries invite us not only to look at the current year and the Christmas business ahead of us, but to take a few steps back, move to a meta level, and leave our everyday business. Let's remember, between 18th and 23rd of September 1949, 205 German publishing houses were present at the first book fair following the dictatorship of the National Socialists in Frankfurt, Paulskirche, and they presented more than 8,000 titles. Frankfurt is still marked by the war, and the book trade shows 9,000 visitors after dark years where even my association was not a role model. How new thinking can look, what democratic values are, and moving towards internationality. 4 months earlier, the Basic Law entered into force, a legislative work which definitely refers to the Constitution of Paulskirche about 100 years earlier. And the Basic Law, which is the new beginning of democracy like no other legislation, then becomes a blueprint for democratic states and a self-commitment for Germans. It is not a coincidence that the book trade picks the Frankfurt Paulskirche as a venue, a space for democracy, for human rights, for freedom of expression and press, and no coincidence that simultaneously in the Römerhalle there is an exhibition of French books. And it is no coincidence either that the second book fair 1950 has more than 20% of exhibitors from the European countries and the United States, going towards internationalism, something marking Frankfurt Book Fair today, making it the most important book fair in the world. And when, because of more and more exhibitors, the book fair moves to the fairground, the book trade keeps the connection to Paulskirche and its symbolic force and awards the German Peace Award of the book trade after the book fair, even there, right there. And over the years, the book fair establishes itself as the marketplace for books and licenses and the Agora for the intellectual, social, political discourse, a room of freedom of expression, and I want to stress this, of peaceful living together of different cultures in the world. And the book fair more and more turns into a space of vivid democracy, a festival of plurality of thought, and an invitation to exchange ideas and for debate. And in 1956, it became a subject of debate because renowned personalities turned to the book fair saying that they had to exclude right-wing publishing houses. In 1968, when people protested against the Minister of Finance Franz Josef Strauß, and in 1989, when following the fatwa by Khomeini against Salman Rushdie, the whole book fair focused on the satanic verses without Iran being represented. The political dimension of Frankfurt Book Fair and its international role don't make life easy for Juergen Boos and his team, but I think that especially the political aspect turns the job of the fair director into the most fascinating one within the international book community. And, well, the book fair itself is a place of democracy. And Mr. Boos, I'm a little jealous about this, I must say. But why do I think democracy is so important? 175 years ago, people started to protest for freedom and diversity, risking life and limb. And today we see that these values are more and more under attack. Number of autocracies is on the increase all over the world, and the number of democratically ruled countries is going down. And let me thank you to all the Polish people who made the right choice. In many parts of the world, there is no peace. The terrorist attacks of Hamas against Israel absolutely shock us, and we condemn these acts of violence. And, of course, we are full of compassion for all the victims of violence in Israel and Palestine. For 1.5 years, war has been waging in Europe. The attacks of Russia against Ukraine in violation of international law and human rights are being trampled on. And I'm concerned to see that here in Germany, extreme positions in society and among political parties are more and more accepted. Debates are escalating. Single words cause an outrage, and populism, nationalism are gaining a stronger foothold. But these developments show we need to defend the rights of freedom and democracy as individuals, as an industry, and as a society. The book trade makes an important contribution to a society based on the diversity of topics and different opinions in freedom and democracy. And exhibitors show how it works. They use the book fair as Agora, as a place where the thinking based on discourse is brightened and where the other party may change direction in case of convincing arguments. Our guest speaker, Gaia Vince, is an excellent example. She shows the context between climate and migration and invites us to take a new point of view, not only regarding the new migrational movements because of climate change as a problem, but as an opportunity. And here in this country, this is a very controversial point of view, and this is what good books can deliver: questioning points of view and trigger debate. Well, the right to have freedom of expression needs the willingness to form an opinion and to educate yourself. In the days to come, we will experience a plethora of storytelling, ideas, thoughts, opinions that you do not find anywhere else in the world. And we need to have the goal of filling this diversity with life and safeguarding it. But now, the fly in the ointment is that more and more bookshops and publishers, authors and translators hit the limits of their economical life, also in this industry. And then they will no longer be able to face up to what society needs them to do. If we look at the German book market, at first glance, it looks okay, because sales in the first 9 months of the year increased by 4% compared to the year before. However, in the same period of time, 1.1% fewer books were sold, and compared to pre-COVID times, 7.4% less. In the year of COVID, with the stores closing and fairs canceled and problems with raw material and energy prices, a lot of publishing houses were no longer able to survive. They don't have the money required for investment in sustainability and digitalization. But the small independent publishing houses are the ones who, far away from the mainstream, determine the diversity of the book trade. Ladies and gentlemen, if part of this system collapses, then the whole system is jeopardized. So politicians and the society must ask themselves, how much is a diverse book landscape worth? It's a matter which is relevant in terms of culture, education, and social policy. And in order to maintain the diversity of the book market, we need structural subsidies for publishing houses. Action needs to be taken, and the ideas of the coalition treaty need to be implemented in order to make sure that the funds are available. In order to guarantee this fascinating diversity in future as well, we need new content developed by authors and other creatives who want and have to make a living with this. ChatGPT and other AIs will also shape the discussions in the hallways and the panel discussions this year. And the industry meets AI with open-mindedness and interest, because they change and shape our everyday life, increase efficiency, and take workload off our shoulders. However, Even though we are all enthusiastic, we have to understand that in the interest of authors and designers, that everything AI is texting and creating takes place in violation of copyrights. And, well, this is a euphemism for piracy. So action needs to be taken legally and politically speaking. And I see another area where action needs to be taken. Books can only develop their power in society if people pay attention to them. And for public perception of content, the visibility of media is crucial. Giving space for culture and literature is a basic task, especially of public service broadcasting. Programs and features on books and authors are not only crucial for the attention towards books, but our society needs to deal with the impulse provided by books. Discussions about books and their topics are important elements of our culture of debate, so they need space in a contemporary way on non-linear channels, but also on linear channels. In recognizable formats, we're drawing a lot of attention, and I think all those responsible should be aware of this. So let me draw your attention to tomorrow's event at 3 p.m. My association here at Frankfurt Pavilion will organize a panel discussion on the future of literature reporting. Ellen Trapp, Kerstin Gleber, and Frank Menden will be our guests. I'd like to invite all of you to attend. And now I turn to politicians again. All the visibility only works if people are able to read and understand what they read, i.e., once they've learned to turn abstract letters into stories in their minds or into exciting facts. Reading competence is a basic element for educational careers, the basis of a solid life in order to take part in political and social discourse. Reading competence is not only important for the individual in order to have a fulfilled life, but it's the basis for resilient democracy. Illiterate people, without being aware of it, have a weakened immune system when attacked by populist pathogens. Children of educationally alienated families sometimes don't acquire this reading competence any longer, and this fills me with concern. So I appeal to politicians at federal, state, and municipal level. Take this task seriously. It cannot matter where somebody comes from when it comes to education. Our educational stability depends on equal opportunities and stability of the democratic state. People risked their lives for this 175 years ago. But I'd like to stress a very positive thing. For 3 months, we've had the so-called Culture Pass. Everybody who turns 18 will get a budget of €200 for cultural offerings. More than 200,000 young people are using this opportunity, and I'm glad to be able to tell you that of the 400,000 shopping activities that we see, more than 50% go towards books. So the Culture Pass is a very good approach to make young adults excited about culture offered at local level. And here I'd like to thank, on behalf of my association, our Minister Claudia Roth for this very, very valuable initiative. And please continue this success story. By the way, the Culture Pass also makes it possible for young people to buy a reduced ticket for the book fair. And, well, let's hope that we will meet a lot of young people at the book fair this year and in the years to come. 5 packed days, and the great event at the end on Sunday will be awarding the Peace Award of the German book trade to Salman Rushdie for his unfaltering attitude, his positive attitude towards life, and especially for his enthusiasm in storytelling. In his novels and non-fiction books, he combines his foresight as a storyteller with literary innovation, humor, and wisdom. And he describes the force of destruction on part of terror regimes, but also the indestructibility of the spirit of resistance of individuals. And in this sense, I wish us a brave and inspiring fair with good meetings, debates, ideas with respect, open-mindedness, and tolerance. Thank you.
Vielen Dank.
Thank you, Karin, for these deep words, also for the good message at the end. Every other culture pass holder has bought a book. So we can actually bank on our 18-year-olds. That's good news, and certainly we'll have further good news with you, Juergen. The floor is yours for your speech.
I know it's freezing cold in here, so maybe we can close this curtain a bit. I'm very sorry for that. Last week it was nice, this week. So we have to see. Karin, vielen Dank für Ihre Rede.
Karin, thank you very much for your speech. And dear guests, this year's motto for the 75th Frankfurt Book Fair is, "And the story goes on." And it shows the continuity of this fair, which invites the world every year in October. Even the pandemic could not change anything about it, and the story goes on. So the chronicles have something reassuring. Looking back to the 75 years of history of the book fair, society seems to have changed only very slowly. But times today are not like this. The world has been frittering away at the seams. We've got the crisis of climate change and the crisis of Western democracies. For more than 18 months, we've had Putin's war of aggression against Ukraine. And since the 7th of October, we have another high point of the escalation of violence in Israel and Palestine. Our thoughts are with the victims, their relatives, everyone who is suffering from terror, Hamas terror, and the war in Israel and Palestine, and we are completely shocked. Frankfurt Book Fair has always revolved around humanity. It's the human encounter which is at the center, and humanity has broken down again. We condemn terror. We condemn anyone who's financing this terror and making it possible. And the world has come open at the seams now. And can the book industry or the Frankfurt Book Fair help to some small extent even? Yes, they can, and I would like to explain to you how. Compared with other media, especially the social media, the book is a very slow medium. From the origin to the publication, it takes time, and it is subject to lots of quality checks during the process. That's why books are also a corrective for any flash-produced fake news. Sam Yatin even know that, who published in 1920 the novel We, and it was the counter idea to the Russian propaganda or Soviet propaganda. This bestseller has been published in many languages, and he really condemned the regime. And he then was the first. This was the first novel which was banned by Stalin. Books also deepen discourse and promote the understanding of conflicts. They give us advice. And that's why in times of crisis there is a rise of the non-fiction and of the life support books, as you can see at this book fair. And the the demand for expertise is very high. And if you're interested in authors and their opinions and their analysis, you are quite completely right here at the Frankfurt Pavilion. This is the stage also for Alina Shabokova, Can Dündar, and also institutions like the Goethe Institute in Kiev and Amnesty International. This is the stage. And we also have the international stage this year. For the first time, authors from the Global South will talk about US, Europe, climate change, feminism, and the education towards sustainability. But in order for these voices to reach out to the general public and become part of a solution, we need the book industry. an industry which respects everyone who is involved and everyone given a fair share, the authors, the lectors, the translators, and their publishers. And this brings me to the book fair as the worldwide biggest trading place for novels and for books. Lit Ag, our center, has been fully booked and has grown in terms of floor area by 20%. This is where the contracts are negotiated for the authors. I'm stressing this because it is unfortunately quite necessary, because this raw material about whose rights the negotiations revolve is passed around for free in other areas. For example, digital platforms use digital databases like Book Free with 2,000 titles in order to train their artificial intelligence, including bestsellers of big publishers like HarperCollins and Random House, without involving the authors, without giving the authors any fair share. And by contrast, a trading place for rights and licenses is a place for the right, for the copyright. 10,000 book titles are not a free resource in order to train AI. It's important for us all in the book industry to see how the court cases will end up in the US about this. It's not just a trading place, it's also a place for authors to find some reassurance for 75 years because of our international program for discussion where artificial in publishing is being talked about, and there is further education, there is networking within the book industry at the center. So for the Ukrainian book industry and German and Ukrainian institutions, this is a big stage for training programs and promotion programs. Of course, this doesn't end the war in Ukraine, but everyone together makes a small contribution to its solution, be it only because of the experience you make of human solidarity. So this also becomes a political affair, because we don't just have a cultural mandate, we also have a political mandate. And since 1988, we've been inviting a guest of honor each year. And we're putting a focus on the literature of this respective country and network the authors and the publishers on the international stage. And in this way, every guest of honor appearance also strengthens the democratic society in each respective country. And today, this is even more important because of the crisis of democratic institutions. Under the motto, Honeycomb of Words, Slovenia is presenting its cultural and literary landscape with 75 Slovenian authors, poets, philosophers, and translators. Our guests of honor make an important contribution to the program of the fair as a public fair. I'm especially looking forward to Slavoj Žižek, who is one of the most dangerous philosophers. And he has his own analysis on climate change and sustainability. Just listen to him tonight at the opening session. I'm also looking forward to the poetic art of Miljana Kunta. And this is also part of our mandate to give courageous voices an echo chamber. And of course, I was very moved by Salman Rushdie's announcement to come to Frankfurt. You will also be listening to his voice on Saturday in the framework of the Literature Gala. Then we have the last generation, the so-called Letzte Generation, who was for the future at a literature stage. So the Frankfurt Book Fair can make a small contribution to solving the current crises. It gives the book its public space. It gives the industry a stage for self-reassurance and gives an important stage for bold voices helping us to understand the crisis and working for their solution. And in this sense, I would like to introduce our guest of honor of this press conference. But Torsten, of course, that's your job, actually. Thank you very much.
Danke dir.
Thank you, Juergen. It's a pleasure to take this job to introduce our keynote speaker, but I'd like to introduce her briefly, Gaia Vince. What is the subject of the next few minutes, ladies and gentlemen? The living conditions across the world are changing rapidly at the moment. They are changing to such an extent that more and more people find themselves forced to leave the place they live at and move somewhere else, migrate somewhere else, because this place has become unlivable, because it's a place of poverty, of war, because large regions of our planet have become physically unlivable because of climate change. You could also say, and I would like to quote a term by a German philosopher, people are losing their freedom to stay, and so we've got big migration movements. And Gaia Vince, our keynote speaker, has looked at the subject very closely. She has made very detailed research into this matter, and what she's found, she's written down in a book which has been recently published only in German, The Nomadic Century, in German. It's a fascinating book, not just because it's a gripping tale and it's full to the brim with facts, but what is surprising also is it's an optimistic book. It's a book which does not become petrified because of these challenges, but it offers solutions, as Juergen Boos has said. So looking for solutions, trying to find a way out. Gaia Vince is a journalist, an environmental and scientific journalist, who, with her first non-fiction book, I think that was 7 or 8 years ago, Adventures in the Anthropocene. I'm not exactly sure of the German title, but that's what made her a household name in the international public. And this book has won an important prize. We've been able to win over Gaia to speak at the beginning of the 75th Frankfurt Book Fair. Coming here from London, it was a quick trip because she's traveling across the world for her research and her work, and she's taken the time to come to us. She's a journalist, as I say. She's writing for BBC and for The Guardian. She used to write for Nature and New Scientist, and she's now here. Gaia, a very warm welcome.
It's a pleasure for us to have you with us in Frankfurt, and the stage is yours now.
Einen wunderschönen guten Morgen.
A very warm welcome, dear book enthusiasts.
It's my huge honour and pleasure to talk to you today at the start of perhaps the greatest meeting place of ideas anywhere on earth. And I thank you for your kind invitation. Thank you to my esteemed previous speakers. And thank you especially to the translators who are my voice today and who have provided that essential work in making me understand and making readers understand what my message is to you today. And I don't think translators really get their due, so I really want to thank them, all of the translators. Such important work, especially when we have so many divisions in societies. Translators provide that really useful bridge in idea sharing. So it's a very cool, I'll say cool, it's cold day today here in Frankfurt, but as we know, this year has been far from pleasant globally. 2023 has burned hotter than any year on record. Our accumulated carbon pollution has seen to it. In addition, the developing El Niño has further boosted temperatures. Let me remind you how marine heat waves turned the Caribbean Sea into a bath this year, cooking coral reefs, how the heat and humidity proved deadly across the world, with temperatures hitting 50 degrees Celsius in the Americas, in Africa, in Europe, in Asia. Last year's heat wave killed more than 60,000 people in Europe alone. This year, the death toll will be more. It's still being counted. Around the world, prolonged drought has dried up fresh water supplies. It's led to severe power outages. It's slashed crop harvests. It's caused food and energy prices to soar, which exacerbates conflicts and hunger. We've had we've had real difficulties from Sudan to Mali in that respect. And the furious fires, Canada's been on fire since March, it's still on fire. We've seen entire towns reduced to ash. We've seen evacuation of tens of thousands of people, deaths of hundreds, powerful storms that have turned streets into raging rivers. Subways have been flooded, bridges rendered impassable, landslides, highways completely blocked. Entire villages have been underwater in the heart of Europe, houses washed away, agricultural plains completely inundated, regional bread baskets submerged. And bear in mind, I'm just talking now, wrapping up the northern hemisphere. The southern hemisphere is, it's just begun entering its spring. Its season of climate chaos is already beginning. There is now nowhere on Earth unaffected by the climate crisis. Wherever you live, conditions are changing, and everyone is feeling the impact of extreme weather, physically, financially, socially. We're not even at 1.5 degrees above the pre-industrial average, and yet we will soon breach it. We must mitigate our emissions, of course, and it's great to see that leaders are finally embracing this message and seriously engaging in decarbonisation. But we must also be realists in this world, something that no country is effectively doing at the moment. However, as the planet continues to heat over the coming decades, for large populations in large areas of the world, conditions are becoming too extreme. There will be no way to adapt. People will have to move. A great upheaval is coming. Climate migration is inevitable. It is already underway, as I've seen for myself on my travels around the world. We need now an honest, pragmatic discussion about how we make this work. The time is now. We are approaching system tipping points. Events like these that we have seen this year will become more frequent and more severe. And they will occur at the same time in multiple locations, within countries, across regions, and that wears down people's resilience. It displaces the displaced. It displaces them across borders, across continents. Disasters will lead to cascading events, and consider that months of unbearable heat and drought in Pakistan last year were then followed by these devastating flash floods, then followed by landslides. They destroyed homes, bridges, food supplies. People couldn't then return. They couldn't get any assistance because the infrastructure was not there. 33 million people were displaced in the matter of a week. Globally, we are now on track for a heating perhaps of some 3 or even 4 degrees this century, and that is catastrophic. It means that large areas of the globe, some of the most populated places in Asia, Africa, and the Americas, will become increasingly dangerous. And not just gradually, we're going to see it in step changes, sudden step changes. In the next decades, large swathes of the tropics, of coastlines, river deltas, where many of our most populous cities are located, will become unlivable for at least parts of the year. Whereas the globe's far north will experience lesser impacts, and they will be better able to adapt. People will move north. Wherever you live now, this migration will affect you and your children. Have no doubt that climate change represents a threat to our species. But we can manage it. We can survive. But to do so will require a planned and deliberate migration of the kind that humanity has never before undertaken. Human mobility this century is not just about people and families moving. It is also about the movement of production, of resources, of capital, of industry, of expertise, of agriculture. In some places, it will mean the expansion of existing cities. In other places, entirely new cities will have to be built by migrants in the newly habitable far north. This is an upheaval, but it is also an opportunity. Migration, well planned, enriches societies and economies. It provides labour and tax where it is most needed, not to mention the huge cultural benefits. And bear in mind that most of these northern places that will be receiving migrants are facing a huge demographic crisis because people are not having enough babies to support an ageing population. Economies like mine and yours are propped up by immigrants. There are not enough of them. A planned mass migration could provide a better world, a better Anthropocene, global societies that are safer, cleaner, greener, fairer, wealthier, places of opportunity. We need to plan them. Migration could solve a lot of problems, actually, and that shouldn't be a surprise, because throughout our evolutionary history, it's been fundamental in creating the species that we are today. We are only the global, networked, powerful species that we are, able to change the planet so utterly that we dominate its wildlife, its climate, because of our successful migrations. We are the only ape that left our tropical niche in Africa and colonized the whole world. And we did so by cooperating, by forming these large hypersocial networks, and by using our secondary migrations, our ability to migrate the stuff of the planet. We carry with us and trade all the resources, water, fuels, foods, everything, the stuff of the planet, and we trade them within our own societies and between societies, between groups, and that enables us to live everywhere, to live anywhere, and it enables us to respond to disasters and respond to opportunities. We are so successful at relying on these cooperative migrations of our stuff and on the migrations made by others, complete strangers all around the world, in our enormous, now global networks, that most of us now lead relatively sedentary lives, and migration can feel a bit like an anomaly. It is not. For most of human history, in fact, almost all of human history, we migrated continually across our shared planet. We relied on our networks to exchange genes, resources, ideas, technologies. And these movements can now be seen in our languages, our foods, our technologies, and it's rendered us all genetically extremely related. And I don't mean, going back thousands of years. I mean, within a few generations. Culturally, we are now brilliantly diverse. If you look at cities like Frankfurt particularly, which are built on immigration, they reflect this synergy of ideas and innovation, this bringing together, this great fusion of human brilliance. It is only very recently that we have imprisoned ourselves within the idea, and it is an idea, of nation states and borders, most of which were used originally to stop people leaving, to keep hold of human labour. It is only in the past decades that we started using borders to keep out those who would enter to work. Yet this unusual political place, one that is incompatible with the implications of climate change, of climate reality, is where we find ourselves today. The scale of our planetary drama demands a dynamic response. The solutions are within our hands. We need to help people move from danger and poverty to safety and comfort. We will have to think like a global community, pan-species, about where and how our population is distributed. The planetary scale of the challenge we face requires that we think beyond the limits of our recently invented political borders, and rather in the context of the true borders that exist, those imposed by geography and climate. Nationalists and populists are not new, but in the words of Frankfurt's most brilliant son, Goethe, who explained why he declined commissions to write nationalistic poems, and again, I apologize for the English translation, this business of hatred between nations is a curious thing, but there exists a level at which it wholly disappears, and where one stands, so to speak, above nations and feels the weal or woe of neighbouring people as though it were one own. Well, what better place to discuss grand ideas than this magnificent fiesta of literature? The immense power of a book is that it enables us to escape the insular confines of our daily lived lives, the cage of preconceptions and judgments constructed by the time and place and society that we're born into. We turn a page and the narrative carries us to a different viewpoint, allowing us to see the world differently. And that perspective can be illuminating. Let us now be carried outside of our own time and space and politics and take a longer, grander view. Let's look down on our spinning, living planet from far above. We can see our precious human world built upon its surface. It is dwarfed in this perspective by the immensely powerful Earth systems that encapsulate it. See the tiny buildings, the stick-like skyscrapers, the little toy cars, and the trains running on their cute tracks. How vulnerable it all is to mighty ocean waves that would wash them away, or the lightning-fast flames that flash across them, smothering huge regions in blankets of toxic smoke. The many little humans, fragile in their flesh like ants, they don't stand a chance. Let us spin our globe now into the 2040s, the 2050s, the 2060s, watching the globe heat and the deadliness of its middle band expand, deserts grow, coastlines dissolve, the human habitability niche shrinks and shifts north. Where shall we put our remarkable species? These humans that are capable of so much and who have so much to offer each other to create a better world for all of us, this synergy. In this extraordinary time, can we not grasp the possibility that no one has more right to the safe places of our shared home than anyone else? Ideas often seem crazy or impossible until suddenly they're not. Slavery was once so fundamental to economies that abolishing it seemed ludicrous. It's an argument similar today for keeping fossil fuels even while they're being replaced. During times like now, where horrifying conflicts are going on, hateful politics and devastating disasters, change can seem hopeless. It is not. Consider that in the lifetime of people alive today, even within the 75 years of this book festival, the world has dramatically changed, and much of it for the better. In place of world wars and devastating famines that killed tens of millions of people regularly, we have achieved a massive decline in hunger and poverty. We now have the structures in place for global cooperation, including agreement to act on the climate crisis. A huge border wall was once erected to divide this country and keep people in. Der Berliner Mauer lasted for 28 years, but for more than 30 years, it has been replaced by its opposite, free movement, now across 27 countries, from the Arctic to the Mediterranean to the Baltic, even to South America, in French Guyana. The scenes of climate devastation that have been broadcast across our screens this year show how fragile our human world is, how fast our homes, schools, offices, bridges, roads, croplands, farmlands can be utterly transformed by the monstrous force of violent weather made more energetic by us. Each televised scene is followed by people, dazed, confused, undone by these planetary events and the personal losses that follow. They are displaced literally from their homes, but also emotionally displaced from the world they could previously rely on to remain constant and safe. With each year, we will see more disasters, more broken lives and tragedy, but it doesn't have to be this way. Every emergency evacuation, every boat full of refugees, every truckload fleeing disaster represents a failure of imagination, a failure of policy. We could instead plan this movement from planetary danger so that it is a managed transition taking place over decades, rather than a chaotic crisis. Migration is inevitable, even if the scale and timing is not, but we still have choices. To avoid facing it, to avoid thinking about it, or even discussing our options is itself a choice. It is choosing a future where climate events continue to lead to misery, death, and conflict. It is not a future that I want for myself or for my small children. Our security depends not on erecting defences against each other, but against our mutual threats. Violent typhoons, ruinous droughts, and deadly fires. We will need to recognise our commonalities and draw on the tools that we have to act together, whether language, culture, or our shared humanity. There is only one Earth, there is only one human species. We can choose our future. We can create a vision of the world we want in the coming decades, and then take the steps to achieve it. But first, we must talk honestly about what we face and what our choices really are. There are no easy options now. Everything has trade-offs. Let's talk about it. Let's start the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very thoughtful and thought-provoking and inspiring speech. Just to imagine things we think to be impossible as possible. So it's a new horizon. Und meine Damen und Herren, ich springe zu.
And I would like to jump back to German, because that's what it says in the program. We're slightly late, but any word which has produced this delay was worth speaking or hearing. But still, I would like to I would like to live up to my promise that you will have a QA, and also afterwards there's time enough for one-on-one discussions and interviews with Karin, Schmidt-Friderichs, Juergen, Boos, and Gaia Vince. But if you have any questions now, then of course you're very welcome to do so. I think there are roving microphones on both sides of the room. Can I see your first question? Oh, there is a question in the front. The fourth row. Mr. Boos, can you tell us who is going to speak at the opening as a VIP, because the Federal Chancellor cancelled his participation? Who is going to come apart from the Slovenian President? Claudia Roth. Claudia Roth is going to stand in for the Federal Chancellor. I'm still in discussions now, but I think Claudia Roth, the State Minister of Culture, is going to speak on behalf of the Federal Chancellor. That's official. But let me add, it's not the politicians who are at the foreground, it's the authors who are in the limelight. Slava Slišek, Miliana Kunta. There was another question in the third row.
Obviously, with the Israel-Hamas conflict starting, and you and the fair organisers have expressed support for Israel, unsurprisingly. But we've seen some tensions there. Some book publishers in the Middle East have withdrawn, and overnight I saw the Indonesian Publishers Association said they won't come either. How do you feel about this? Are you saddened that these kind of divisions are also kind of playing out at the book fair?
As you know, and I talked about it, the Frankfurt Book Fair is a safe haven, and freedom to publish, freedom of speech is our DNA. Yeah. So whoever wants to participate, and it's all about bringing people together. We want it to happen, so I'm very disappointed. Whoever planned to come is not coming because of geopolitics. That's a complete disaster for us, for myself. I want the people to be here, to have a friendly discourse, to have discussions, even if it might be controversial. So I'm really looking forward to bring all these people back who are not coming because of geopolitics.
Eine Frage.
Question in row 7. Microphone's coming your way. How do you reconcile the delay of the award ceremony for Ms. Schiebly with this your position? Well, we've got two focus points. One is diversity, positive controversy, dialectics, basically, controversy. And the other point is Elias Canetti called it hate speech. I want to protect authors from hate speech here, and that's why it was important, together with Litprom, the organizers, to not give hate speech a chance or a stage. I can see no further questions. Yes, there are questions, sorry. I'm Rudolf Sauer. I represent the German history paper, and you mentioned a German philosopher who said that people are losing their right to stay. What is her name again? You mentioned the name, but I didn't catch the name. So this philosopher I was talking about was Eva von Redeker. She didn't talk about the right to stay, but of the freedom to stay, which is a different concept from what you seem to be insinuating. But it's a very readable small book, 100 pages by S. Fischer. It's great fun reading it. Further questions? Blue mask. A question about this again. Whether the delay of the award ceremony to this author has been done by consensus with the author, because our knowledge is different, that this was not consensual, and that's why I would like to ask you again. Maybe I can come in on this briefly. The Litprom Association, which awards this prize, and whose jury decided to award the prize to Adania Schiebly, was in close contact with the publisher and the author about the question, what shall we do now, since the situation has come to such a head, as Mr. Boos has just said. And at the end, Litprom took the decision to delay the award ceremony to a later time in a context which would make it more dignified, to have a more dignified exchange about literature, and to delay this. So, as far as I know, or I perceive, there has been some misunderstanding between Litprom and the author about this. So we have to say it was a decision by the Litprom and not a consensual decision by both sides, but it has been lots of discussions in the run-up to this decision. More questions? Yes, please. I would like to also ask about the same subject. Hundreds of authors have protested against this delay now. For example, Nobel winners, and the freedom of speech and the stage for authors. That's really what the book fair is all about. And you want to be different from populism. And would that not be more important than the question of a small club association lit problem? Isn't this really a topic which concerns the whole of the Frankfurt Book Fair, and also for philosophy, as you just mentioned? Well, as Juergen Boos says just now, we've always been a platform for freedom, the free word, for the peaceful exchange of all people with each other, for an exchange about different perspectives on the world, and nothing will change about this. We'll not retract any of these words. Any author who subscribes to a peaceful exchange can come. Israeli people, Palestinian voices from all over the world. We have to be clear about that. And as I said before, the background for the delay of the award ceremony was nothing to do with our position changing by 1 yard, really, about this. We didn't change anything about our point of view, freedom of speech. That's what we're all about. But, ladies and gentlemen, I think we could now pass over to the next stage, because it's 12 o'clock. For all of those who would like to have personal interviews with Gaia Vins, Juergen Boos, Karin, Schmidt-Friderichs, there is a chance in the front. But before I do, I would like to make a few announcements. At 12:15, at level 2 in the forum, there will be the start of a tour for the Guest of Honor Pavilion. The architect, Yuri Sadar, will be there. So anyone who would like to take a look at the Guest of Honor Pavilion can do so. And also when it comes to architecture, when we came in here in the morning, I heard from many of you that's a sensational building, Frankfurt Pavilion, awarded several times. The architects are Schneider and Schumacher, and right on time for this event, they have created a book which you can order from Radu. And if you're interested in the history of this iconic building, Ragu will help you there. And finally, if you're looking for photo opportunities about them over and above the speakers on stage, you can just go to the Agora and direct your iPad to the Fair Tower, and it will transfigure to something which fits the idea of a book fair. So this is augmented reality specialist Zauber from Berlin. Just take a look and have your smartphone directed at the Fair Tower. Thank you.
Hi, nice to meet you.
No, it's the first time that I met you because I covered the